everybody, and welcome to the Outplay Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jonny Globas, and sitting next to me is my good friend and following in the wakes of Jonny Appleseed. He continues to feed you from the bot lane. Is Jonny Esports.
LE Jonny Esports
now.
LE
Jonny Esports now. You're now a professional. You're basically LCS.
So far, my contract was negative $10, so I had to buy my own name.
It's funny because we did a thing where when they redid the club system in League of Legends, they have it so it goes behind your name. So we had for the longest time, we had the LE. So we have LE Globas LE because it goes after the name. It's so aggravating. But
well, mine's like mine's now LE Jonny Esports RES. So it's just like, what? Who are you? Pick a side.
You're advertising everybody. Now you're gonna, whenever you get a sponsor, you're gonna put in there like LE Jonny Esports RES Doritos. MLG, Gatorade,
nachos.
Yeah.
Just nachos in general, not even like a specific brand, just nachos.
Oh, people in the chat are pretty excited. I'll show you a real neat little. It changes color.
It's his Fungin.
It's my Fungin. Yeah. It's the rest of the basement is complete trash, but this is the fun part. So I love it. It's beautiful.
I said I needed to do something to step up. I've done literally nothing. I have this thing from Elder Scrolls here. I'm drinking water out of my cup. I got mini eggs.
I have a secret stash, so I'm good to go. I can just keep refilling my drink. I'm good to go. But Jonny, this week has been nothing but clown fiestas.
Oh yeah.
Oh man.
To catch everyone up. Basically, the only thing that happened this week was the EU Challenger Series promotion tournament. And if you watched it, it was awful.
It was, for a moment, I couldn't tell if I was watching EU LCS promotion or Jonny Esports in Bronze 5. It was...
Yeah, it might have been... like, it might as well have been.
It was... I mean, to give you guys perspective, what the EU LCS promotion tournament is at the end of the season, the bottom 3 LCS teams... who are salaried players that make good money doing this. They have to play against the top 2 teams from Challenger, who are basically trying to, if they win, they get into the LCS. So not only do they get to play in this LCS League next split for 5 months, but they get a salary. They get money from Riot. And this is where the sponsors really come in, because if you're in the LCS, you're on screen so many times a week. So this is a big deal for these organizations. And
oh yeah.
It was painful. It was painful.
The worst part is we talked about it last week of how we're like, Giants is probably out, someone will probably switch in, whatever, because Giants are bad. And it wasn't like the case of like, oh, the Giants proved they were good, and some of the casters were trying to play that story. No. And I was like, no. Everyone, like Huma was really bad, Copenhagen Wolves was really bad in their series. Everyone they played against was awful. It
was like watching like who could throw harder. Yeah. And it felt painful to watch. Like I remember, I believe there was a few games where you saw Pepe, who's the mid laner from Giants, when they were losing the games to Splice, and even when they're playing against Huma, you saw like every time a misplay happened, he literally wanted to smash his camera. Like you saw him because they have little cameras for the LCS players. You saw him sitting there like, what is going on? Like I can't even understand what's going on. And it's like, I get that, these guys have been struggling in the LCS. But there's a lot of arguments that are made that, the LCS teams, because they play every week, get the advantage over the Challenger teams, right? Because the Challenger teams, mind you, a lot of them now have gaming houses, so the advantage is getting slimmer and slimmer. Mm-hmm. But they play a lot less, right? They don't play as many on-stage games. In fact...
And against worse competition when they do get to play, when they do get to do scrims and stuff.
And the best part is, Huma and Copenhagen Wolves, the teams that made this tournament for the Challenger Series, weren't even the best in the Challenger Series. They struggled against each other. They struggled against the other Challenger teams. The only reason why they're even here is because Millennium and Inspire, the other 2 teams in the Challenger Series, for some reason, they were doing great through the series, but in the playoffs threw it. So you have these 2 terrible Challenger teams versus these 3 terrible LCS teams, and it was just... as Twitch chat will put it, clown fiestas all the way through.
Yes. I just really hope people that say were wanting to get into League of Legends for the first time or something didn't watch that. Like that.
We said to watch it because you're like, oh yeah.
We said to watch it because it might be easier because like it would be way more swingy, and we knew it would be way more swingy, and it's less like one team would be dominant, and it was like Giants had to play. I believe they went best of 5 in every game they went, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
No, they went 3-1 versus Huma.
It's Huma. Again, yeah. So the final one, they finally didn't go best of 5. So, and you would think it would be because they would adjusted play between matches, but it just seemed like the Giants would come out. I ended up watching most of the Giants games by fluke just because of how I ended up watching it. But it would come out the Giants really strong in the first game, and it's like, okay, yeah, so it looked like the Giants maybe improved and maybe have actually made a step. But then they would be awful in the second or the third game and let the other team come back into it, and then somehow the other team would throw it to bring the Giants back into the game, and it was like there was no game I remember watching that was like, okay, this team is taking over, except for maybe the Giants' first game against people in the series, which I guess it was enough because after that first game of the Giants, it was always just like both teams throwing against each other, and it was so bad.
It was like I understand that mechanically I am nowhere near the levels of any of these junglers. Like I play jungle and I don't play anywhere near this level, but it was like the simple like macro play was like. I feel like I saw better macro play in my like silver promos. You know, like you were seeing like these teams build team fight comps and then not team fight. Like they would build team fight comps and they would play split push. Or the opposite. Like you saw teams build a split push comp and then do nothing but team fight. And it was like I don't know if it's a mix of the coaches telling them to play something different than they're used to, or if they're not knowing how to play a certain comp. It was like a weird mix of communication where their pick and bans made sense. It was like, okay, they've got a great split push team here. All they gotta do is split push. And there was Giants who had a few games where they ran nothing but team fight comps. Like, all right, as long as we team fight, we win. And then you would see them win 2 or 3 team fights back to back and be like, they're gonna win this. Like they're gonna push ahead. They're gonna team fight, shove a tower, win game. But then you would see them do a 3-1-1 split. And it was like, why? You just won 2 or 3 team fights. Why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know?
If anyone, it's exactly like if anyone was watching the pre-show to this, where I was playing with Pyro, if you were watching that, you saw like, okay, you see this win condition. You could see we had Nasus getting strong, and you could see that in a lot of games when you're playing solo queue. You have this win condition that seems so clear, but then you go in a different direction all of a sudden, and it didn't work out. And that was happening in this Challenges series. So, I'm playing this game of solo queue, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, so Nasus, we have this win condition here. He'll just go and carry, but then he just goes off and AFK farms for a while because he's Nasus, and it doesn't work. It seemed like that was happening in this Challenger series, or in promotion tournament, but they're pro players that should know way better. So it's really weird.
Yeah, and I feel like any other team would have taken advantage of that. Like, if that was any other LCS team, they would have taken advantage of it and won. And out of this whole tournament, I feel like Splice was the only team that looked strong. Because Splice, while lower team in the European LCS, dismantled Giants in the games they won, but they still had issues in the game. Like, in the games they lost, it was like Giants actually looked okay. It was like, okay, they played their comp, it happened. But in the games they lose, it was like, Giants could have won that, and Splice had this weird thing where they were either completely on or completely off, and you don't see that. It was just like, I don't know if it's just they're going too ham or if they don't know their own power spikes, but it was like you saw them going way too ham a few times, but it was like at least they're doing something, and I felt like of all the teams, they're the team that like did the best because they at least like made an effort. And I'm not saying that they look strong and like, oh, they're gonna come back to the LCS and do great. No, it was
no.
It was at least they were being proactive in their plays, and it was really risky and a lot of times didn't pay off, but at least they were trying something.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you see a player in Senkux on this team on Splice, and you go like, they can build around what he does, and sure, yeah, maybe you go for something and you make a mistake. But you can at least go, okay, you go back to your coach, you'll go back to Yamato Cannon, and he'll give you some sort of weird speech in his sweet accent, and he'll tell you like, hey, you went for that and it's great, you went for that, this is how you can make that better next time or whatever, right? And you can see that in regular sports too. You see we probably have a lot of Winnipeg viewers, so if you see the Winnipeg Jets and you see like stuff that they've been pretty bad all season, but then you see some games where they'll beat the LA Kings, who's one of the best teams, and you see them trying for risks that maybe they weren't doing because they were feeling all this pressure, and it's good to try for those and build off that. So hopefully for the Splice team, again, I don't predict them, obviously you wouldn't either pick them to be like top of the table, the LCS or something, but you could see them pushing towards that middle of the table, and maybe not have to fight for relegation next split.
I know, I hope so, and I actually hope that coming into the LCS next split, we'll see a lot of roster changes in the lower tier teams, because I feel like Rocket was a team, for example, that I actually had middle of the pack. I thought they were going to do okay. They had a good roster, but it didn't work out. And I think that, like these teams, they have to realize that they're losing to newer, younger players in the ULCS, and something has to be done. G2 is a good example of a team that made a lot of risks with a lot of young talent, and they're top of the standings. And so I feel like, these lower tier teams in Splice, mind you, Splice has a few good players I feel like they can build around. I feel like Rockat's a team that took a lot of just LCS veterans because they were like, oh, well, they played in the LCS, they know what they're doing. And I feel like that's a team that should really change their roster because aside from Betsy, the team looked awful. Like, Betsy was the win condition. And it was funny, there was an interview, I think it was in their second game against Huma. In the first game they won because Betsy just went off. And then there was an interview with Airwalks, their jungler, and he was like, and it was the interview that happened like it was pre-recorded before the games, and he was like, I feel like Betsy's the reason that we could win a lot of these games, and as long as I get Betsy ahead, we win the game. And then the rest of their wins, you just saw that happen, and it was just like, he was foretelling the future of how they were going to win this game. It was just rely on Betsy and you win the game. And I think aside from Betsy and Rocket, there needs to be a lot of change in that roster because, I mean, they beat Huma, but they also lost some games to Huma. Like, it was... It's like if you're losing to these middle-tier challenger teams, like all three LCS teams, Giants especially, but if you're losing these middle-tier challenger teams, you really need to rethink something for next year because you're not going to get lucky again and face a cruddy challenger team the second time around, and you're going to be in relegation.
Well... I'm a guy who always thought Tabs was a pretty decent ADC, and they did add Noxiac pretty late into the season after he got dropped by Fnatic, and I think we both agree that Noxiac seems like a pretty good support. So maybe they need to kind of build some synergy. Yeah. So I think they just need to build some synergy. Sorry, I shouldn't have ate a mini egg right before speaking. So I think this bot lane has an opportunity to kind of become something and have a little bit more synergy. I don't really see that happening, but like if that's gonna happen, it's gonna be that along with Airwalks doing it. This team, this Rocket team has been consistently this team that you look at the roster and you go like, yeah, I recognize some of these names, and if they could just kind of put it together, they could be like in the top 5, like not like one of the fifth team, like maybe that's where their potential lies. But it never seems to quite get together. And like you're saying, maybe that means like they've been trying it for so long that they just gotta move on and try something different. But
I want to say something really, really funny.
Sure.
When it comes to Rocket's roster, Reginald and TSM single-handedly made H2K win the European or get top 2 in the European LCS because I don't know if you remember this, before the split there was this argument where H2K had wanted Sven Skaren as their jungler, and TSM made an offer, and Sven Skaren jumped ship to TSM before they even played a game.
Yeah, and there was some talk about like maybe it with it being poaching kind of, but like and Reginald working around the rules. But I remember reading about that and not really being sure what to think. It seemed like Reggie was like going within the rules, but at the same time there was all that crap about the managers of H2K talking to Sven Skaren's parents and trying to say Reggie's a bad person. So it's like there's a lot of weird stuff with that.
It was basically an issue of it was actually a lot of fault on Sven Skaren where Reginald had talked to him and he's like, "Are you signed to anybody?" And Sven Skaren's like, "Nope," and he was. So there was a lot of that. But my point was that it's funny because H2K was going to grab Svenskeren. They had Svenskeren on lock. They were like, this is part of our new roster. And then TSM comes and grabs him. And then H2K grabs Vander and Yankos from Rocket.
Yeah.
And so they come to H2K. H2K becomes this super team. The only reason I think they got second is because of the visa issues between two of their players.
Right.
But then Rocket lost their star support and jungler in Vander and Yankos. And it's funny because I think that with Vander and Yankos, this team would have been good because you had Betsy, who's strong. Freddy, I think, is absolute trash, but I mean, he's serviceable as a top laner. Tabs did okay. And then you have Vander and Yankos, the first blood king of the LCS. Yeah, they would have done okay. I think they would have done a lot better. So tips off to TSM for literally destroying the European LCS.
Yeah, well, exactly. Reggie in his Drive series saying he has his footprints in deciding where esports goes, and more than he meant, I think.
Yeah, I love the Drive series with so far, and I was actually a little upset with the GBM one because there wasn't much info in it. It was a little. It was a long haiku.
Yeah, the GBM one exactly. It's not like we joked about it before, where I was like, well, this GBM story is pretty much my parents didn't believe in me, but I believed in me, and now my parents believe in me because I'm making money. And that's like the story of like most people getting into esports. So the GBM story wasn't fully interesting. I like the stuff about GBM, like the whole going over the wall stuff. Like that's a cool narrative. But yeah, as we transition to the story, if everyone watches Drive, the original story. I was talking before about like, hey, do you want to get into esports? Stuff like this is how you get into esports. Watch, go to lolesports.com and watch The Drive, because it's basically a little documentary about the owner of TSM, which is kind of both of me and Globas' favorite North American franchise, and it just kind of shows you like what he wanted to do to make his team the best and how he's trying to get there. And he used to be one of the best players in the league too. So it's a cool story, and if stories are what's going to get you interested into esports, which I think that's what it would get you interested in esports, check that out and check out that
check out the Matt one as well.
Check out the Matt one, yeah.
It's about each series of Drive is about a different player, and there's the second one's about Matt. That one's a great one too. It's a little more hometowny. It's about a guy who played in Hawaii and also proved the argument that your ping means nothing because he played with triple the ping that I've ever played with in Hawaii
and made it to Challenger.
And made it to Challenger. So don't even try and pull that one on me.
Lag.
But I know. It's you always have to blame lag because it's never your fault, right?
Blame lag or blame the jungler. There's three things. The three rules of League of Legends.
I know. I'm the jungler, so I felt it. But speaking of NA, North American playoffs coming up. Mm-hmm. We've got this Saturday, Cloud9 versus TSM, the oldest rivalry in the book. And interesting tidbit here, it's impossible for us to have the classic NA finals of every split since the first one, TSM versus Cloud9, because they face off in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, so it's nice that we'll for sure get it because they are just for sure playing.
Yeah.
We want to see the Cloud9 versus TSM. Some of these old members are still kind of there. You have Sneaky still there, and you have High still there, so they kind of have the old guard. But obviously TSM is an extremely new team, so like compared to like last split, it isn't quite the same. Or sorry, even like last.
It's
last
only Bjergsen, yes.
Yeah, it's basically only Bjergsen that is from those days, I guess. But nevertheless, this will still be a very good game. TSM, we've been saying, is basically we need to see what they can do in best of series because we really feel like these are a lot of veterans that can do well in best of series. And from now on, there's no longer best of ones. There's actually going to be best of threes in regular season, but they're going to be doing best of fives into the playoffs. And we saw it last season where TSM was kind of middling, and then they still made it to the finals because they were just more superior at people at best of fives. However, they are going to Cloud9 first, which make it tough for them because Cloud9 has also shown they are pretty superior against people in best of fives. So this is an interesting series, and I'm interested to see how we kind of talk about this and break it down and see who we think is going to come on top.
Mm-hmm. I actually think that it's the very, very hard for TSM this matchup, but I do think it's one they could win. Personally, I think of the 4 teams in the quarterfinals, I think Cloud9 is the strongest team. I think they faltered in their last week of the NALCS, and I think that we saw part of that being to High's champion pool. But I feel like that Cloud9 is a team that as long as they get a decent pick ban, they're going to win the game. And if you get 5 shots at picking bans, you're going to win a few of them, right? Like,
yeah.
And Cloud9 is a team that I feel like, because they are part of the old guard in High and Sneaky and Balls, in that they know how to play these long series games, and High being one of the world's best shot callers and one of League's best shot callers in history, he's like one of the guys who he doesn't falter when it comes to high stress situations, which is great because we see a lot of different shot callers do that. I feel like TSM's a team that might do that just because these guys have such high expectations of themselves that they might just, if they don't win the first game or two, you might see them just falter out or fizzle out because they're just too high strung. Whereas Cloud9, they have High to fall back on, and I feel like High is somebody who, even if they go to that 5th game, he's going to be just as focused and just as driven as he would be in game 1.
The only reason I don't think TSM will just straight up falter if they lose early, and I know this was against a challenger team technically, but if you look at IAM and they went against Ever, and they lost that first game to Ever, they were able to kind of basically fight back and be able to make their way into the quarterfinals of IAM because they kind of got to play a team another time. They got to be able to see what their mistakes were, see the strengths of the other team, and kind of counter that. And I like to think with Reggie stepping in as coach again, he's going to be smart enough to kind of know what to help them out with those picks and bans and get them through to another spot where they have a shot at this. I really hope this goes 5 games, and I think it will. I won't say who I think is going to win yet because I want to just talk about this a little more. But I don't think it. I really feel like
you think it's a lot closer than I do. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm really like, as much as I personally think Cloud9 is the second best team in NA, I don't think it'll be easy.
I think I'll be honest with you, I don't see this very close. TSM did shock me at IEM, and I talked about there how they seem to got their act a little bit together, because even in the loss against Ember, they looked strong. They looked very, very strong, and then they threw this massive lead. But the thing is that when you have a guy like High, who's such a good macro player, I see that happening. I see TSM winning every lane because Cloud9, aside from Jensen Bjergsen matchup's very close, but aside from that, I would give every lane to TSM. You know, I'd give their top lane to TSM. I'd give their bot lane to TSM. But when it comes to late game, I would give it like tenfold to Cloud9. And Ever was a team that they looked very strong mechanically, but macro play was just awful. And Origin is a team that, you know, this entire split has had terrible macro play. It's been the solo queue game of can Soaz go off or not. So TSM beat those teams at IEM, but I think it's because the enemy teams had no macro play at all. Like, they had terrible, terrible, terrible late game. But I think Cloud9 is a team that can give up an early lead and still make it back. And mind you, Cloud9's jungler Rush, I think, is going to do laps around Svenskeren.
Oh yeah, like I agree with you on that one.
I think the Bjergsen versus Jensen matchup is actually the one that he's going to leave alone, because I think he's going to have to help Balls and help the bot lane. But I think that Rush is going to be such a huge impact in this game. I think that the early game, if Rush gets ahead, it's done. There's no question at all. If Rush doesn't get ahead, there's still the chance that High shot calling is what saves them in the late game. TSM, aside from Bjergsen going off or Cloud9 literally blind picking every matchup, I don't see it happening. I see maybe a 3-1, but I see Cloud9 heavily winning this matchup.
All right.
You're gonna disagree with me wholeheartedly.
I'm gonna partially disagree with you. I do see Cloud9 winning this one, and I think I mentioned earlier, I see it going 5 games. I think a lot of it's gonna be the blue side advantage, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cloud9 finishes a higher seed, so they get to pick the side they want first, or is it still a coin flip?
I believe that Cloud9 gets the pick, and they get to pick in 3 of the 5 games.
Yeah. Okay. So because of that, I think that's actually going to be the biggest difference between these two. Um, I'll agree with you. With Cloud9's probably going to have better macro play, but it's for the most part, I think in every lane besides jungle, I think TSM is going to be that little bit better. Again, you mentioned Jensen and Bjergsen are probably pretty close. But I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt to Bjergsen's experience and best of fives over Jensen's for now, and think that they're going to be able to keep it close and be able to do that. And I think what they can do, just using that slight advantage you have on blue side, I would imagine Cloud9's going to be able to use that with their better macro play to win 5 games, or sorry, 3 of the 5 games. But I do think this one is actually going to be a lot closer. And maybe I'm fanboying and just hoping it is, but I feel like this TSM team can prove that if they get a second shot at a team or they're not good at best of one team for whatever reason. It hasn't worked this season, but I just feel like it's gotta click now, and that because it has to click now, it will click now. One of those things.
I don't know. I will be honest. I disagree only because I agree that TSM as an organization historically has always had this weird thing where they do okay in best of ones, and then in best of threes, the joke used to be TSM would win every first game and then win every other game. You know, and it would always happen. You know, they would go against teams that looked a lot stronger, and they would lose the first game, and then now they'd be like, okay, now we know what we're doing, and they would win the rest of the series. You know, but we haven't seen that from TSM this split. We've seen them struggle against most teams that they should be just slaughtering, and I mean, they lost to Renegades in the last week.
That's the one thing that makes me go, oh no.
And it's like how, and they lost to Dignitas. Like,
to be fair, Renegades did win the games.
They lost to Dignitas, Johnny. Have a counter argument for that. TSM lost to Dignitas, and that's just it.
Dignitas, who finds new ways to lose games every week.
And it's like this team in best of ones looks awful. You're like, okay, well maybe they did okay at IEM. But IEM, I think they faced the 2 weakest teams. They faced Origin and Ever. Now, Ever was a challenger-level Korean team who had a lot of hype coming out of Worlds because they did great. But at the tournament, didn't really show up against anybody. And you're like, okay, well, they did good against a Korean team, right? They did great. They won against a Korean team. Well, this is a Korean team that's not even in the Korean LCS. Like, they're not the top 10 in Korea. They're in the Challenger Series. And so they beat them in a best of 3. Okay. Then they play against Origin, who I'd argue, like, are just like the solo queue team. Like, they have no macro play at all, and
it's Niels, Terry, or
it's Niels and Soaz. Yeah, it's
Soaz,
and they have a very great mechanical team. Well, guess what? They're playing against TSM, who has a great mechanical team with a little bit better macro play, and I think that's why they won. And they had trouble against Origin too. So going against a team like Cloud9, who are on a mechanical level are maybe like a tick lower, but on macro level are going to run laps around these people. And I think that with Rush being such a strong early game jungler, I can't see a situation where Svenskeren has any sort of early game pressure. Like, I'd be at like if Svenskeren has any sort of early game pressure this tournament, like I will eat a sock. Like, there's just no way it's going to happen. So I have no faith in TSM. So I'm sorry TSM fanboys out there, Jonny Esports included, but your dreams of TSM making every finals in the NALCS are going to die this Saturday.
Yeah, I think it does too, to be fair. Again, I think Cloud9 wins. I just think it's closer. And I just really hope you don't see Svenskeren play that Kindred because it makes me sad. Every time I watch him fail that ult, and it's like, oh no. Oh no. Okay.
But yeah, it'll be sad to see TSM not make finals, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I don't see it either, realistically. So the other quarterfinal, Energy Esports and Liquid, probably a much closer matchup. I would think both of us would see it that way.
Yep.
We have Team Liquid here, who at times look like, hey, they could make a play for the top of the ladder, and at times look like they really can't. And then Energy Esports, kind of the same story, where you go, man, GBM is really cool, man, Altec is a good ADC, and sometimes you see that the greatness, and then sometimes you really don't. So these teams have both been kind of inconsistent, and they come into a matchup where they play against each other. I don't think there's a clear favorite on either way.
I think that it's 60-40 for Team Liquid in terms of favorites, just because Liquid has had a great second half of the split. their early half of the split was pretty bad. They were bringing in Matt and Dardoch and Lorlo, who was a last-minute replacement for the top lane, and Matt and Dardoch, who were the better halves of the Team Liquid Academy team, they decided to bring in. I think are vast improvements now that we've seen them, work out. I think, though, that they are a little bit too cocky. As Piglet would put it, they're the best team in North America. I think that they're a strong team, and I think that the macro play is pretty good. I think that their shot calling from Matt is pretty good, and we saw them go against Cloud9 this past week, and a team that I'm saying had a great macro play in Cloud9, Team Liquid walked laps around. And I don't think it's something that I could say like, well, they beat Cloud9, so they're way ahead of them. Because they did slaughter Cloud9, but it was a game that I felt was decided in picks and bans. And I talked about this a little bit last week. I was saying how there was actually a pick where Team Liquid had first picked Corki, and Cloud9 was like instantly like, oh, they're picking Corki mid, time to lock in.
Going on Phoenix. Yeah.
Yeah, let's lock in Azir. We're gonna win this lane so hard, it's gonna go great.
Lock in Azir, blind pick the Jhin.
Yeah. Bad. And then they realized, oh wait, it's Corki bot lane. And I think it was actually a situation where I actually think it was Corki mid. But I think what happened was once they locked in Azir, Team Liquid was smart enough to say, no, let's throw Corki bot, because Piglet can play it, so let's grab Zed, sorry. And
Piglet went MVP on it at Worlds.
Yeah.
On Corki, right?
Well, Maddie was never meta at the time. It was the Trinity Force meta at the time. But I do think, I think that, you were just outplayed in picks and bans. And that's why I think that Team Liquid's a team that I feel like strategically in their picks and bans are very strong. And I feel like in their macro play are very strong. I feel mechanically they're okay. I feel like Phoenix and Piglet are really the shining points of that team. But I think that they're a team that I would still give the favoritism in this matchup, because Energy, on the other hand, are a team that I feel like it's the GBM game. Can GBM absolutely slaughter the enemy team? And there's one Victor play I have to go back to. I can't remember which team it was against. It was either Dignitas or Renegades. Where there was a situation where GBM, if it was any other player, would have died. He was Victor. He was behind the second tier tower, and there was like 3 people going on him, and he was going through the jungle brush, and literally they could have walked him and just like autoed him to death, but they decided to group up, and then GBM just turned around, dropped his combo, and got a double kill, and then walked out scot-free. And it was like, I feel like that's what Energy has to do to win. Like, GBM actually has to play Faker level plays on his own for this match to happen for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because we talked about a little bit about what we thought of this Energy team before. You of course also have Impact, who's also on that former SKT team. We both talked about Moon. I like Moon a little better than you like Moon. I don't think Moon is like super fantastic or anything, but I think Moon has potential. But he's got this big this big wall of he's the jungler who can't communicate with his team. Being like basically he has to communicate through Altec to be able to talk to the rest of the Korean players, which is really hard. Especially Altec has to focus on being the ADC, which I don't know if I ever talked about on the show. I always think like the ADC and like having to focus on more than what being an ADC is really asking a lot out of an ADC. So I think that's really the biggest problem on this GBM or on this GBM team, which is basically what they are. But they have this little bit of this X factor there where
GBM can lock in Karma.
Yeah. He's the one that showed everyone Zillion mid could be a thing. I
feel like GBM hits the random button every game, and
it's like,
I'll play Zillion today, I guess.
Like I think that it's gonna be enough for GBM to at least sneak a game by some random pick that GBM's gonna make that Liquid's not gonna be able to handle with.
But can you do that in a best of 5? This isn't a cheese.
Yeah.
Like
best of 5, that's really hard.
It's something that, again, like I said, like Team Liquid's a team I feel like in their pick and pass is very strong, and you're giving them 5 shots. Do you think GPM has like 5 pocket picks? He's got to pull like Urgot, Sejuani mid, like stuff that you've never heard of. Like
no one's doing the Nautilus mid in NA yet.
He's got to play Yorick. Froggen did it.
Froggen did it?
Yeah.
I missed that.
He's got to play Yorick. He's got to play stuff that like Team Liquid will sit there and be like, I don't even know what to do. Like, just surrender 20.
I think we're both saying Liquid's going to win this one. But play devil's advocate, I think the best chance Energy has is to kind of go all in with whatever they're planning this week in that first game and try to tilt Liquid. Because if there's one thing you can do, you can tilt Piglet. And Piglet is is the strongest player on the team. And if you have him tilted, you have a shot at maybe like you win that first game as a surprise. And then if you win that second game because Piglet's tilted, then you're just asking to win one game after that. Like, it's still a tall task for Energy to pull off. Mm-hmm. And for all I know, they would win those first 2 games, and Liquid gets their shit together, and then we win 3 in a row because, like, wait, we're the better team. Let's just be the better team. So, yeah, I still think Liquid's going to win this game, in this series, too.
I do think it's going to be a close series, because I do think you're going to see... I
think it's still 5 games.
I think you're exactly what you had said. You're going to see a game or 2 go where GBM goes off on some odd pick like Karma, and Team Liquid will then just ban it out afterwards or play around it. But I feel like there's going to be a game where Energy can pull it off. But I just don't see... Like, I feel like Team Liquid has one of the best jugglers in North America right now in Dardoch. And I feel like the top lane matchup is going to do okay. Lurlo isn't great, but Impact hasn't really shown up recently. I feel like bot lane and mid lane, are Liquid's strongest points, and Phoenix is going to do okay against GBM. Like, if there's a mid laner that's going to do okay against GBM, I think it's going to be Phoenix. Because I think that they don't know... They have such a wide champion pool in Phoenix that they won't know what they could surprise them with. Like, they might pull out Karma mid, but I feel like Phoenix is going to be prepared for it because he's got such a wide champion pool that, they might do a thing again where they flex pick something like Corki and then say, Kate, go ahead, lock in that weird champ we know you're going to, and then he's going to be like, just kidding.
Just kidding, it doesn't work.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, before we move on to EU, let's just go like, hey, we both kind of picked what we thought were the favorites on this on this one. We both think it's going to be Liquid and Cloud9, and they're both kind of the favorites through this. If there's going to be an upset, who is more likely to upset between Energy or TSM?
If there's going to be an upset, it'd be more upsetting if TSM wins, but I think that Energy is more likely to have a chance at beating Liquid. So,
all right,
I'm gonna go with the Thorin. I'm gonna go with the Thorin response. I don't know if you saw his clickbaity video. It was actually a very smart business move where I
heard about it. I didn't actually watch it, but I heard about it.
He made a video basically where he explains why Energy is gonna win, and it's genius because everyone's talking about it. We're talking about it, and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna say how stupid he is for thinking that, and if it happens, he's the prophet. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter because we're all still talking about him right now.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with like any sports. Like, it's always safest to be like, I do this all the time. Like at the Super Bowl, it's like I want this team to win, but I think the other team will win. So like, no matter what, you either pick the team you want to win, or you pick the team you thought would win, and you're just right, like somehow, right? Man. So, yeah, there's that. I think Monty had a response to the video saying, no, you're dumb, and, like, Liquid will win. And then after that, it was like, but for real, why do I care about a team that's not, like, top 20 in the world? I don't actually realistically care about this
team.
It's
pretty accurate. And there was a pretty cheeky response where Team Liquid's, what was his name? I think it's Jake. He's one of the assistant coaches, and he came out with a video response that's why Liquid is going to beat Energy. I thought that was pretty cheeky of them.
Super good. I gotta watch this video. I didn't actually watch it. All right, let's move on to Europe because also playing on April 2nd. First will be Team Vitality and Fnatic, and then on April 3rd will be Origin. What did I say?
Yeah, I don't know. You said it really Italian. You're like, but Vitality.
Vitality. Team Vitality and Fnatic will be against April 2nd, and on April 3rd we'll have Origin versus Unicorns of Love. So let's first talk about the April 2nd matchup of Vitality and Fnatic. I think this is pretty easy to call a little bit. I think I know I've been trying to be suspenseful and not say my picks right away when I was talking with them, but I think Vitality looks like the best. It's so hard to pick between who's the best team in EU right now, but they look like one of the best teams in EU. They're at least one of the top 3, and I just think Fnatic's just not with it, and I think Vitality will just take this.
I have to agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that Fnatic really showed up at IEM, and they showed a very strong game. And I do think that the new Fnatic roster is going to do okay in the long run if they keep it. I think that they need to learn how to play around Spirit more. I think Gamsu needs to learn how to throw lane. Like, he's still got that inner Dignitas in him, and he can't help but throw his lane. He's like, how are we winning? The
colors are still yellow and black.
He's confused. He can't read it. But they need to learn how to play around Spirit, because the Spirit at IEM, we saw the Spirit of old, the former Samsung Spirit. Yeah, the guy who was like one of the world's best aggressive junglers. We saw that, and it was beautiful, because as long as he could get him through the early game, Fabiven and Reckless were great in the late game, and Klaj, I think, looked great at IEM. I think he's looked okay in the last few weeks. Like, he's really improving, and you could see that cohesion happening. But then you saw the last few weeks of Europe where, like, Spirit was like, time to go back to tank junglers. And it didn't work. And it's like, oh, stop it. Stop it. Go back to Nidalee. Go back to Lee Sin. I
don't know how much we talked about. How much do you think that's influence of Daylor, the coach on Fnatic, who's been famed of being one of the best coaches like ever? But how much do you think that's Daylor forcing that upon Spirit? And just maybe that's not what the direction they should go.
I don't. I think that it's not Daylor, because Daylor, in a lot of his interviews, he's a guy who understands the game a lot less than his players, and a lot less than most, I'm going to say, coaches. But his thing is that his work ethic, and he's more of a, not so much a life coach, but kind of a life coach, kind of like a drill sergeant. And he's very, very, very good at that, and nobody can even touch him on that level. But as an actual strategic coach, I think he's meh. I think Yellowstar was a big part of it in the former Fnatic, and I think that they've said before that they had some good secondary coaches. Like, one of their coaches is now with TSM. One of the strategic coaches is now the head strategic coach of TSM. So I think Daylor kind of takes nods from his strategic coaches, which makes me think one of two things. One, either the strategic coaches are very bad, and that now that there's no Yellowstar, he's falling back on them. Because, mind you, these strategic coaches are people who are probably very, I'm going to say, who were able to coast a bit. Because even if their strategic, pick and bans and strategy were terrible, they had a really great team to play with the past year. They had a superstar roster, and they had Rainover and Huni, and it was beautiful. But it was
there were times last year they would fall behind because it's wasn't maybe the right team or whatever was going on. They just still came back to win because their players were so good. But
exactly. So I think that these teams were a little bit spoiled. The strategic coaches, so that now they're like, okay, boys, we actually need you to pick up the slack here. They might not be doing so hot. But that as well, we don't know the conversations that go on, like, in picks and bans.
Yeah, that's completely us speculating.
Right, and so I can't tell. I don't feel like it's a Daylor thing, because I feel like Daylor doesn't understand that, what Spirit's strengths are in the game. At least I don't expect him to. The strategic coaches should, and I don't think they do. And I think Spirit himself is just kind of being like, I'll go with the flow. Gragas is very strong. I'll play Gragas. Gragas is, one of the top tier picks right now. Yeah, he is, but you're terrible on him. Stop playing him. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. So I don't think it's a Daylor thing, but I think it's a coaching thing as well as a player thing, because I think that Spirit's just going along with it, and the lack of Yellowstar is just you feel it. Vitality, on the other hand, I talked about this I think last week or the week before, where I said I think Vitality is the best team in Europe. I think that they are miles ahead, because Vitality is a team where it's like, even I can't pinpoint what their weak point is. Like, Vitality is a team that, they lose some games, but a lot of their strengths that they have are that they can play so many different play styles. We've seen a few games where with Cavachar, the former carry of Gambit, just goes off and just destroys. But then we're also seeing Nukeduck. Nukeduck was a guy who had a very strong split when he first came to LCS years ago.
Oh, yeah.
and then just like mediocre the rest of the way through. And now we're seeing him come up, and the prodigal son has returned. He's doing great, and he's able to play so many different things. Like, we've seen the Nuke Duck carry, we've seen the Nuke Duck Lulu, we've seen, like, so many different play styles out of him, and so much strategic differences in his play style that it's like, how do you play around it? Like, I don't feel like there's a thing. It's not the CLG approach where it's like, oh, we can just beat them because we'll counter Zion Smart and you win the game. In this thing, if they shut down Nuke Duck, who cares? There's Cabochard. You shut down Cabochard, who cares? There's Sojarnan. Like, the team, I think, is strong in every level, and I feel like their cohesion and their faith in each other is much higher than any other LCS team, that I can't see them losing to Fnatic.
No, yeah, I completely agree with you on all fronts. This team coming into the split, I even thought that maybe their weakness was Kasing at support, just because we watched him try for TSM and it didn't really work out, and I thought, oh, Kasing isn't all that hot, but he's come in and shown a lot of synergy with Yarnin, and that bot lane looks.
He used to play with Yarnin in H2K.
Yeah, exactly. So it just goes to show that sometimes you just like synergy is more important than individual skill. Like, that's very much shown with TSM. Whereas like this team with Team Vitalities, they just come together and just have a good formula for this team. And they are in that trinity of teams where with Vitality and H2K and G2 Esports that all seem like I really feel they're all super close at that top of this European LCS. And they just barely don't have a bye right now. And I think they're at this point right now they're a better team than Fnatic. I think we can look at next play and maybe Fnatic makes it more interesting as they improve. But yeah, right now I just think Vitality would probably take the series 3-1 just based on performance they've been doing all split. And like you said, it's hard to pick a weakness. Whereas Fnatic, you can find chicks in that armor. You can find Gamsu not playing super consistent.
And Cabochard's gonna walk him. Like,
yeah.
It's such a skill difference that you're like, what do you even do? Like, Cabochard will single-handedly win the game, and you put him up against like one of the weakest top laners in Europe. Oh man, it's gonna be a slaughter.
Yeah, I don't really see Fnatic doing that, and because I said that, they'll somehow upset and win this because
I know. We were so confident Giants would lose, and we didn't. We were very accurate in our portrayal of how bad Giants were. We overestimated every other team.
How bad everyone else was.
Yeah. But I want to say one more thing about this matchup. Sure. This, again, April 2nd. April 2nd is the day. Mark your calendars, because the TSM is not going to make the North American Finals for the first time in history, and Fnatic's not going to make the European Finals in the first time in history.
There's parity in esports, which is a good thing. Like, as much as I love TSM and I like the Fnatic organization, all this stuff,
it's nice seeing not complacency. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll convince other organizations to want to put more money on the bottom end because, hey, like, we can actually unseat these guys. It's like in CS right now, the Fnatic in CS is unstoppable, and it a little bit hurts the brand of Counter-Strike. It's good to see a little bit of parity. It does actually help the brand. It's even happening in Korea, too, with, like, SKT is not dominating everyone and stuff, so League of Legends is in a good spot.
Mark the calendars. Watch those games, because it's gonna be the fall of the old guard.
And last game in the EU LCS we'll talk about this week, Origin versus Unicorns of Love. I feel like these will be really weird games.
I think we're gonna see a little taste of that clown fiesta this past week again.
Hey, before we actually talk about the games, Steelback was given MVP in the EU LCS.
I know.
And I like Steelback.
But he was not the MVP.
How are you even rating him over Forgiven, or even Reckless on Fnatic, who's not even having that great of a season? I still think Reckless is better. I don't get it.
I think there was the whole discussion on Reddit that was really interesting, where they talked about how there was tweets from certain LCS pros. They were talking about how the MVP this split, which is really weird because normally MVP is just decided. Like, they announced it at the end of the broadcast, and like, the MVP for our split is so-and-so. This year, it was weird where they said it was a whole voting discussion thing, and that there would be pros, analysts, and so-and-so would vote. And then you saw tweets from Forgiven and the rest, and half of HGK say, like, well, we were never told to vote. I don't know who, like, we didn't vote. And
I do have to make a quick correction though. It wasn't that Steelback got MVP, but he's first team as the ADC on their like little MVP on their all pro teams that they picked out. So Steelback is considered to be the best ADC in Europe. Again, over Forgiven, over Emperor. Like
yeah, I think it's odd. It's odd to say the best question because I think Steelback really shut up this split. I don't think he's not even on the same level as Forgiven. Like Forgiven is a monster. So it's really weird. But get into the game. I think it's going to be a little bit of a clown fiesta, only because I think Origin, as we've talked about time and time again, are this really, really, really weird team where it just looks like solo queue every game, and you have some of the best solo queue stars.
Yeah,
you have this like
Sven, Soaz, amazing, so good.
Yeah,
so good individually.
But you have this odd like they're not great at macro play, and Xpeke came in, a guy who's been retired. He came in and he looked better than anybody on the team, and it was like, oh man, this is not boding well for them. Unicorns, on the other hand, were very surprised in this split. I did not expect them to even like make playoffs this split. I thought they were not great. And
they had tons of exits. Lots of people in this team left, including Power of Evil going over to Origin, and he was their carry for so long.
Match.
Yeah,
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, so like. It's weird. Like, we were talking about how team vitality is like, oh, this team with no weaknesses, and they all come together and are strong. Origin's like literally the opposite. It's a team of fully strong players that aren't together, and there's so many weaknesses here and there that it's just like, but somehow they're occasionally a good team.
It's because mechanically they are a very strong team. They can outclass their opponents, but when it comes to macro play, it's awful. Unicorns are
which is so weird because like I've been saying this all season with Origin. They're a team of veterans too. It's not even like, oh, they're a bunch of rookies who don't know how to play the game yet and don't know how macro play works. No, they're like Soaz and Amazing have been around forever. Like Sven is their rookie and he's probably their best player. Or Niels now. He's probably their best player, and it's just like, oh no, he was Niels. He is Sven now.
He's Sven now, yeah.
Okay, anyway. Brain fart. Anyway, so it's like you feel like everything makes sense for them to come together, especially like at the beginning of the season. Everyone would have said Origin was going to be on top of the EU LCS just based on a lot of that, but it just really isn't coming together. It didn't come together at IEM, which was again sort of like that tournament that was like, hey, you could start turning it around now and everything could be good, but it's not, and I don't see a realistic way it'll get better, but they have a shot at beating this Unicorns of Love team using that experience. Just because, this UL team is just not a super, super experienced team in best of five series situation. So,
and they also have the fact that they just replaced their jungler. What was it? A week ago? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, I believe. Where they had Rudy for a little bit, and I think Rudy looked strong, but they're talking about like, oh, Rudy didn't work out personality-wise, so we're replacing him. And so they brought in Lulex. And mind you, they did beat H2K in their last week. But I do think, again, that this is a team that...
But that was the last week where all the favorite teams all lost for some reason.
Yeah.
So it's almost like we ignore that week.
It is. I think it was a team where people just let slip a lot of it because they were preparing for playoffs. So I think...
and I think it was like teams not wanting to show their cards that they're going to be showing in playoffs. They're just like, whatever, we'll just do whatever. And then, so you had these underdog teams winning. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, it's all right. So I think Unicorns is a team that looks either very good or very bad. And I think that we might see both of that on Sunday. And I think that this is a game. This is the matchup of all the four quarterfinals games going in North America and Europe. I think this is the one that's the closest. Because I could argue a point for either one coming out of groups with this, or to quarterfinals, and I think it's gonna go to 5 games. I personally take Unicorns in this, just because I feel like Origin is a team that Solas has to go off, or Sven has to go off, or they just don't. And Steelback is very strong, and I think that the roster of Unicorns. Has more room to grow. I think Origin Origin has problems to fix, and they haven't been able to. And I think that's a harder problem to solve than Unicorns, which is that we're not experienced. I think we might see through the playoffs, if they make it out of this groups, I think they will, that we're going to see them grow just because of the fact that they'll get some experience.
Mm-hmm. What I think is going to be the strongest point towards this, towards the Origin team is I think the meta is shifting in a way that's going to favor Origin in these matchups. You're going to see some good things, hopefully out of Soaz as he's able to play. Hopefully he gets on that Poppy and it's not completely banned out of him, or if he can get onto something else that's really strong with him, like on a Fiora or something. I think the meta is shifting towards this top lane carry thing, which can help Soaz out there, while Sven could sit on someone like a Sivir or like a Corki and just kind of farm and eventually carry the game when he's strong enough. And that's where Origin was strong even at Worlds, where they were able to make games go long until eventually Sven or Soaz was strong enough to carry. And I think the metas, it kind of seems to always go that way in playoffs a little bit, where the meta's kind of shifting back to that, and it might help Origin just in the long run for a best of 5. I think this Unicorns team, I'm really excited to see how this team builds and how it grows, like more so than even when the Unicorns first came to the scene and they were just like surprising everyone, getting random Baron steals, and a lot of just like really fluky things were just kind of going in their favor. Now it actually seems like they're actually building stuff. You could see them making good macro plays, and you could see them growing as a team. So I think that's going to be great for them in the long run. I think Origin would probably sneak away with this one, just a lot of it going because I think the meta is shifting in their favor right now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure which patch they're playing on, just because of the because it only came out this past week, but there was an update that came out where ZZ Rot now has the health of a pink ward. Where it's 5 autos, and the ZZ Rot being so strong was actually a big reason for the top lane tank meta, because the problem with the top lane tanks at the time was that you could just split push with something else, and if they got ahead, that was it. You would never counter it. But the beauty of the ZZ Rot was that the minions that it spawns, it's an item that gives you tank stats, but also lets you spawn minions. And the minions that it spawns were able to stall out games, and if you got behind, well, you could just place it and you just keep shoving them at your opponent so you can't get towers. But if you get ahead, it would just shove down towers. So it was something that I think made the top lane tank meta, and we were even seeing it in junglers, which was really weird, just because they wanted the more minions. But because of this minor nerf, I actually think we'll see less of it. I think it'll still be an item if it's on this patch, but I think it's going to be used less because a part of the battle with ZZ Rod as well was the fact that even if you planted a ZZ Rod and left the lane, it took a long time to kill it. And if your opponent had an AP top laner or an AP, if AP person found the ZZ Rod, it was almost impossible to kill because it only took AD damage. So it took time, which was beautiful because then you could just make plays on the other side of the map while your opponent's just like spending time killing this thing you've dropped. But I think that the pink ward change will I think will nullify a ZZ Rod as the main top lane meta. So I don't know. I still give it to Unicorns though. I think it'll go to Unicorns. Cool. I think 5 games. What about you?
Yeah, I have Origin, I think, doing this in 5 games. I think this is the first one we actually disagree on, so good. Completely. If we disagree that I think TSM's going to be closer, but I still think Cloud9's going to win that one. So I think this is the one matchup where we have it actually different. So it's good that we're not just agreeing on everything.
We'll find out who's wrong on Sunday.
Yeah, totally.
It's okay. All our predictions are going to be wrong going into Sunday. And then they'll call a draw, and we'll win nothing. So yeah, I'm gonna end with our usual outplay of the week. I've got to give it to Betsy. I think that he was the one person in the entire European promotion tournament that looked like an actual LCS player. So I've got to give it to Betsy. Thank you for at least trying to keep it professional.
The game I had in mind was actually over to the LCK. It was Samsung versus Longzhu.
Oh yes, I saw the results of that.
Yeah. Crap. I'm drawing a blank, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna say that for this, and I'm just drawing a blank on who was playing what. But long story short, Samsung kind of goes into this game. They actually had beat Rocks Tigers, and then they managed to lose to Africa Freaks, and then they managed to lose to Longzhou here. So I don't remember my exact point I was gonna make, but Longzhou was going to be in my outplay of the week, and I forgot.
Oh,
exactly.
You dropped the ball, Johnny.
I did. Oh. Much like my solo queue games earlier with with Sean.
I'm disappointed. That's okay. So I'm Globas of Lineage Esports. You can check us out on the Facebooks, the Twitters, and the Instagrams. /Lineage Esports and lineageesports.com websites still being worked on. It's something that we're very excited to announce, but it's taking a long time. And other than that, where can we find you, Jonny Esports?
You can find me at twitch.com/resports or twitch.tv. Wow, where am I? What is the internet? Twitch.tv/resports radio show, as well as on facebook.com/resports radio show, on Twitter @resports as well. All that resports is because I do a radio show on Sundays at 4 p.m. in Winnipeg. You can turn it to CKUW 95.9 FM or ckuw.ca online and check that out, where we just talk about general esports. I'll throw in League, of course, because it will be in the middle of the playoffs, and I always want to talk about League. But yeah, that's that. Thanks everybody for tuning in this week.
All right, well, we'll see you next week at twitch.tv/AOBTV at 8 p.m.
And I always do a pre-show as well, so if you want to watch me fail really hard at League of Legends right before, hopefully Globus can join me next time. We'll see.
He plays at the same level as the ULCS promotion tournament.
Yeah. So you don't even have to watch those. Just watch me play. It's the same level.
All right. Have a good week, everybody. Watch the playoffs. I love you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.